And there was a celebratory atmosphere because the president was announcing something very, very big, which impacts every single American. For the first time, they are putting together limitations on the emissions of cars and limitations on the fuel efficiency. Now, how are the Republicans going to respond to this? How should they respond to it? One of the people who's charged with that is the number 2 man in the House of Representatives for the Republican Party. His name is Eric Cantor. He's a congressman from Virginia. Congressman Cantor, thanks very much for joining us.
Michael, good to be with you.
What's your immediate reaction to the big love fest today in the Rose Garden with Governor Schwarzenegger and others just praising President Obama to the skies for this new achievement?
Well, listen, first of all, I think we have to just set the record straight that, Republicans have been cast as a bunch who doesn't care about the environment or leaving the earth or our air or our waters in a cleaner state. And that is, there could be nothing further from the truth. And what though we see going on at the White House now is an acceleration of the fuel standards for Detroit and the other car makers, and accelerating to the point where we're going to increase the miles per gallon 4 years ahead of time. And as you rightly point out, this raises the cost for cars. And it seems to be a consistent pattern of what's going on in Washington today, and that is a disregard for the working families and small businesses of America. Our priority has got to be about jobs. Our economy is still faltering. There's not a lot of confidence that has come back into the markets. We need to make sure that we have the best environment possible for jobs to be created. We need to worry about the working families' ability to get through the month as they face job loss prospects. So it is beyond me how it is we are going to help working families if all we're doing is adding to the cost of autos, adding to the cost of paying your light bill, adding to the cost of health care, which is exactly what is going on. And so I'm very concerned about the pattern that we see in Washington, Michael, and I know that you have been a free market, entrepreneurial bent personality for some time, and we appreciate that sentiment.
Well, thank you. Congressman Cantor, in terms of health care, which seems to be, probably we'll get something on health care tomorrow. I mean, clearly what President Obama is doing is flooding the zone right now. He solved the Middle East crisis yesterday. Today he awarded small business people and solved the nuclear crisis, met with former secretaries of state, and announced this big new fuel standards, fuel efficiency standards, and emission standards for autos. In terms of health care, do the Republicans have something more that you're going to be offering other than just no?
There are plenty of plans that are out there. There was one that was announced today, the Republican plan of Senator Tom Coburn and Congressman Paul Ryan that provides a roadmap for consumer-based health care. There is ongoing meetings as we speak in Washington about a Republican plan that is focused on a private sector solution. Let's remember, health care in this country is in crisis for those who don't have insurance. That's certainly a crisis. But if you are sick anywhere in this world and you can afford it, you're going to come to America to be treated. So any prescription for reform ought to start with what works in our system, and then we ought to try and address the fact that many are closed out of the system due to high costs and lack of access to quality care.
What about the whole spending mania right now in Washington D.C.? We're looking at a $1.9 trillion deficit, numbers that I'm sure you never even dreamed of when you first came to Congress. What's the right Republican response for the future, for our children and grandchildren?
Well, the response is Washington ought not be disconnected from the reality of working families and small businesses. Washington ought to be about trying to address the hemorrhaging of dollars by tightening its belt. And it is high time that we see a return to fiscal sanity. There is no way that we can resume a course of prosperity if we are mortgaging our future. And that's exactly what's going on now. And this always reminds me of a statement made early on in this administration by the White House Chief of Staff. And Rahm Emanuel said, let's not let a serious crisis go to waste. Let's go about taking care of the things we were unable to address before. Well, what that meant was we're going to launch a laundry list of endeavors and projects that, frankly, have not been able to pass, but because everyone is so focused on the economy, we're going to try and slip those in too. So what we have now is a spending spree. We see that the prescription for health care reform is spending $650 billion of taxpayer money in a system, frankly, that's already full of waste and mismanagement, without taking into consideration doing some of the things that could last in terms of getting the budget back on track. And we have a very serious situation with a lot of consequences for working families in Washington. Again, it's important, I think, what you're doing to alert people of the gravity of what's in front of us.
Well, Congressman Cantor, you've got your work cut out for you. Would it be possible for you, as one of the leaders of the Republican Party and one of what people call the bright young faces of the Republican Party, would it be possible for you to begin laying out specific items in this bloated, ridiculous budget that need to be cut?
Well, as a matter of fact, Michael, this week we are going to be unveiling a list of specific items and submitting it to the President. This list will comprise of a significant amount of taxpayer dollars and really came in response to the President's request that we work together to achieve some meaningful savings for taxpayers. So I do think you'll see that this week. Let me also say this, Michael. There's been a lot of talk about where the sort of conservative movement is in this country and how we can return back to a principle-based agenda on free markets, limited government, individual responsibility. And 2 weeks ago, many of us launched what is known now as the National Council for a New America. This is a group that is comprised of Republican members of Congress, and the intention is to engage in a conversation with the American people. And this conversation should be focused on the conservative principles of freedom and opportunity. And we need to go out and talk to people, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents of like mind, to convince people that, if you look at applying conservative principles, we can really address the challenges that people face in their communities at home. It is not the proper course for us to engage in engineering here in Washington to solve problems. We know the track record is not good, and we're hopeful that we can not only spell out specifics on the waste front, but also discuss in a wide-open policy debate how we can address the specific challenges that people are facing.
I think that's going to be so important, Congressman Cantor, particularly regarding the issue of health care, which polls show is a major American concern. I am glad to see you and your colleagues in the House finding your voice today. Chairman Steele gave an excellent speech today. Republicans turning it around. Meanwhile, Obama pouring it on. Thank you, Congressman Eric Cantor.